Oh my God. Do you remember, girls? Do you remember? This is the time to remind each other. Do you remember those days, guys? Do you remember? Do you remember when we were young? Do you remember how we suffered during our days? How we did not know these things? Do you remember how you met your first boyfriend? Do you remember? Do you remember the love that struck you inside the heart and you felt like you're gonna melt? Do you remember the confusion? Do you remember the feeling? Do you remember loving to a point that you cannot even contain yourself? You could not even contain yourself. Do you remember seeing him pass by the corridors of your classroom because he used to be a classmate? He used to be a schoolmate, and you could see him while seated in the class, passing out there, and your heart would melt. Do you remember? Do you remember how you loved him? Do you remember when you met and he touched your hand just to say hi, just to greet you? Do you remember the feeling that engulfed you? Do you remember that feeling, guys? Oh my God, girls, do you remember the time he pressed his hand on your shoulder like this? And you felt like, oh my God, I'm gonna melt. Now, do you remember when you first met on your first date? Do you remember how it used to be? Do you remember? Do you remember the words he told you? Do you remember those words, guys? Do you remember him looking at your eyes and telling you that he loves you? Those days when you are so tender and he tells you that he loves you. I think the world has come to not to an end, but to a beginning. Do you remember those days? Do you remember the love you felt for him? You were still students, felt so much love, but something clicked in your mind that your parents would kill if they knew about this. So you controlled yourself. And he kept on telling you that he loves you. And he kept on touching you. He kept on looking at your eyes. And your eyes were dripping with love. Do you remember? Do you remember those days, guys? Do you remember the first date? Do you remember that you did not even have enough for coffee or tea, but you sat in that restaurant and you asked for tea and mandazi, 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 and you are like, oh my God, he has bought me tea, he has bought me mandazi, and he was a student like you. Do you remember? Feeling so loved, feeling so loved, guys. Do you remember those days? Do you remember the feeling when you could go back to class and you were unable to sleep because you were looking at the letters he has written to you? Those are gone are the days when we used to write letters, and a letter could have come through post, and when you received that letter, your heart would melt. Do you remember opening that letter with sweaty hands? Sweaty hands. Your hands were sweating and you were shaking and shivering, and you opened that letter and you read it around. Oh my God, dear sweetheart, dear sweetheart. Do you remember how the letter went? You mean the world to me. You mean the world to me. And those words would pierce the inner core of your heart. And you say, oh my God, somebody loves me. And you read the letter. You read the letter. If the moon could come down to the ground and the sun could touch the ground today, I would sit on them both and tell you how much I love you. And do you remember those words? Do you remember what you felt? And do you remember the love heart that he drew on that letter with his ballpoint pen? And he wrote in there, love. And gosh, you'd read that letter 100 times. And when going to sleep in the night, you would hold that page of the letter like this on your cheek, and you would lie on it, and a drop of tear would come dripping down there on the paper, that is written, those nice words. And you would kiss that letter and try to sleep. And when you try to sleep, you would dream of him. You would dream of him. Remember, he's a student like you. He is a student, but you'd not be able to sleep without him. And you would ask for morning so that you would wake up again and meet in school and see him pass by the corridors of his Form 4 class while you are in Form 1. And you'd look through the corridors while seated in your classroom, and you not concentrate when the teacher was teaching because you would wish, I wish he can come out and go to the toilet. And in the course of his walking, I would see him pass there. On his way to the toilet, I would see him pass there. You almost mastered the hours that he used to walk by those corridors. And because your class was lower in level ground than his, you'd see him up there and your heart would skip a bit and you'd say, there he is. And you would not concentrate when the teacher was teaching because you are so much in love. Do you remember? Do you remember that kind of love? Do you remember what you felt? Do you remember how schools would close and you would wonder when the school term would open again so that you would meet back in school? And in school, you did not go to school because you loved education. You went to school because there's somebody you loved. And on the opening days, do you remember? Do you remember how you are entering the school gate with your bag full of and stuff, and you'd just look as you pass their classroom, the window, to see if he has arrived. And when your eyes met, do you remember? Do you remember what you felt? Do you remember, guys? Oh my God, do you? Oh my God, do you remember? Oh my God, the first parade in the school term that you'd go there and because he was in class 4, in Form 4, and you were in Form 1, you would raise your head to try and see if he's there, if he has reported. And do you remember when your eyes met, how you felt? Do you? Guys, love starts sweet. It started sweet and it has brought us this far. We'll keep reminding each other about these things in this channel, about the sweet times that we passed through. And as we remember these things, a tear comes down our eyes like this. And we keep rubbing that tear. We keep rubbing it with our hand like this because we remember those days that we fell in love in high school and what we went through. Guys, do you remember? Please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you see any notification that comes up next. And guys, share, like, and make a sweet comment. And we have to be in this light because we are discussing very intimate discussion here. So this is the light that we need in our video. Guys, subscribe to our channel and walk with us this journey. Subscribe, and guys, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.